Well, hello, and thank you for joining today for a brief presentation on our plans here at Metro Schools to get back to basics in order to make forward progress and success for all of our students. Again, very thankful to everyone who is able to join. Let's talk a little bit about what we know. On March 13th, 2020, Metro Schools closed due to the threat of the pandemic, and very soon after that, all of the school districts in Tennessee had closed for what turned out to be the remainder of the year. It was an uncertain and unprecedented time for all of us, but our educators and staff worked quickly to find alternative ways to connect with their students and their families to ensure they had the resources and the support they needed during this emergency situation. I would be remiss if I didn't take an opportunity to acknowledge the work of our hardworking team here in MMPS, our support staff, our teachers, our principals, all of our partners for just rolling up your sleeves and doing what was in the best interest of our students, matching safety with our obligation to educate all of our students. We certainly don't know the impact that this pandemic could have had on our students without your great efforts. We also know that our education system is based primarily around in-person instruction and that the disruptions caused by the pandemic will slow academic growth, which has been seen throughout the last year in MAP scores and now in 10 Ready data. Families hit the hardest by the pandemic were often those experiencing poverty because they didn't have immediate access to outside resources. They were often the ones furloughed or laid off due to the pandemic recession or were unable to stay home and support their children while working remotely. This all correlated to larger declines in growth for economically disadvantaged populations. Now, to be clear, school districts were told that the 2020-21 TCAP data would not be used for accountability purposes if we achieved testing rates at 80% or more, and we achieved an 85% participation rate. Additionally, we did not hold students or teachers accountable for their results, and for our students not even in their end of course exams. This is meant to be a baseline for districts and schools to grow from in the future. We also know with our district data that we experienced, just like the state, some similar declines in our student outcomes. We had almost identical proficiency rates for in-person and remote learners. This presentation is meant to communicate the results we do have, but more importantly, what we have been doing and will be doing to support academic growth and acceleration for students. Every student known isn't just a slogan. It is the philosophy that drives the work of our district and our schools each and every day. While the foundation of public education involves core instruction that ensures all students progress at the same level throughout their academic career, we know that each student has individual needs, individual dreams, individual traits and talents that must be nurtured and allowed to thrive. That's our goal and what drives the work we are doing here at MMPS. At the core of ensuring every student is known is ensuring that every student's academic needs are being met. And that starts with a robust, multi-tiered system of support, or MTSS protocol, that helps to gauge the progress of each individual student to ensure they remain on track with their peers through tiered interventions and supports for students who need them. Our MTSS structure ensures that every student is known and every student's needs are responded to. Let's dive down into our MTSS protocol by showing you what that looks like in the day in life of a second grade student's English language arts education. First and foremost, all MMPS students receive high quality Tier 1 core instruction. From there, teachers use multiple data points to determine which students need more intense interventions, such as Tier 2 and 3, in addition to Tier 1 core instruction. Student A here is in the 50th percentile of peers and therefore is not identified as needing more intense interventions. As with all of the students we're going to look at, we start with our core instruction. For second grade ELA, that means our adopted curriculum that is being implemented throughout the district this year. New this year for grades K through 2 is an increase of time in the literacy block in response to a growing need for teaching foundational skills. Then, based on the universal screening process aimed at identifying learning challenges among our students, the student will join classmates for reinforcement and remediation of standards during personalized learning time. This year, you may see high dosage tutoring happening during this time. Here we have a student in the 25th percentile of their peers, which means that on top of core instruction, they'll need to participate in a Tier 2 intervention program, which will often be a small group working with a teacher or an interventionist on a specific skill that the student is lacking, which is hindering their success. MTSS schools could leverage technology platforms funded with ESSER dollars to engage these students on a more personalized level during this time as well. Here we have a student who needs more intensive supports than Tier 2, which means that on top of core instruction, they'll participate in a Tier 3 intervention, which will be small group, work with a teacher or maybe even an interventionist. As a student progresses through the tiers and need a more intensive intervention, schools will provide more individualized supports. That means a Tier 3 student might receive one-to-one instruction if possible, but not higher than a 1-to-3 ratio. We've known from the moment schools across the country were forced to close in March of 2020 that there will be a negative impact on student learning, progress, and growth. That's why we immediately began planning to leverage the resources we had and resources we knew we needed in order to be in position to be and have a successful 2021 school year. That work started with making sure we had a curriculum that was proven effective in the remote learning environment. And so we leveraged a curriculum that we've been using for several years with our MTSS virtual school. The Florida Virtual School curriculum and associated training and support for teachers was adopted district-wide so that when we were all remote or when students who chose to do so were able to return, they were learning and growing on the same level. With the burden of adjusting a curriculum removed from teachers, we knew we could focus on teaching differently than we ever had before in supporting our students. And while this was a virtual curriculum, we also made sure to provide printed materials and supplements for students to accompany the curriculum as an additional layer of support. Starting last year, and I hope for every year to come, MTSS is a one-to-one technology district. It had been on our wish list for many years, but is always placed on the back burner due to being an under-resourced school district year over year. That started in the summer when our technology and school teams identified and prepared every existing laptop in the district to immediately give any student who needed access to a device a computer that they could use and learn. During the summer, the investment through the CARES Act made by Mayor John Cooper and the Metro Council allowed us to purchase a device for all students, along with backups, so that every student who arrives at schools will receive a device they can use throughout the year to learn in the classroom and at home. We also provided and are continuing to provide internet access to families who need it through the purchase of more than 15,000 Wi-Fi hotspots. While academic growth and learning loss have been a primary focus, we also knew that our students and their families were going through one of the hardest years in their life, disconnected from friends and families during a recession that impacted lower income residents the most. The Navigator program connected a school staff member with a student to check in and make sure they had the resources and supports they needed, with collaborative referrals for those who required wraparound, emotional, or mental health supports. Connected to our new status as a one-to-one district, we knew that students and families would need additional hands-on support even when the pandemic was raging, because over-the-phone support does have its limits. We've leveraged our support hub staff throughout the district to volunteer at virtual help centers in each of our 4 quadrants to help with tech support, but also to connect with families to provide other resources as needed. Our classroom teachers are our heroes who are committed to student success, but that doesn't mean there isn't an important role for trained volunteers and paid tutors to layer in that additional small group and one-to-one support to help students grow academically. Our high dosage tutoring pilot launched last year and gave hundreds of students that high level of individual support, and we're going to vastly expand upon that in the upcoming year. Our work over the last year means we are well positioned to scale our research-based high dosage tutoring model to many more students across the district. Our core instruction, leveraging high quality instructional materials with training and support for educators, is the heart of our work in supporting students. Additionally, we also provided every school with quality literacy and math intervention programs so that every student had access to personalized learning supports, whether they were learning in person or remotely. And finally, our Promising Scholars Summer Learning Experience extended the school year for a full month for any student who chose to attend. I'll dive into the details over the next few slides. Following our preliminary MAP scores from the fall of 2020, it was clear that we would need to offer extended learning opportunities for our students in the summer so they could continue to engage in learning and growing academically. After we started this planning process, the state of Tennessee adopted a new law and rules requiring districts across the state to hold summer learning camps to do what we had already intended to do. In metro schools, we opened 71 sites throughout the district with more than 16,000 students registering in our Promising Scholars program. Our teachers provided more than 700,000 hours of math and literacy instruction, and nearly 3,500 students participated in credit recovery programs at the high school level to catch up their grades or to graduate on time. The average day in the life of a promising scholar involves small group instruction with on average, a 13-to-1 student-to-teacher ratio with 6.5 hours of instruction and activities to include 3.5 hours of reading and math, both core instruction and interventions, an hour of science, technology, engineering, arts, and math, or STEAM, activities, along with an hour of physical activity. Grades 9 through 12 had short days focused on ELA and math, specialized courses in college, access, and success. Here are some quotes from students who participated in the Promising Scholars program. The best thing about summer learning for this student was that they could understand things they didn't understand during the school year. Another student quoted, "The best thing about summer learning was learning division because I was really bad at division and I got better." So quality feedback from our students who participated in the Promising Scholars program. On this slide, you'll see what is driving our district. In the center, we have our 4 core tenets that anchor the work of the district. Then you'll see focused outcomes that each student have related to literacy, numeracy, social emotional learning and transitions, whether that be from one grade to the next or on to college and career. Surrounding the core tenets and focused outcomes are our 14 signature initiatives that are driving the work of our support hub and school leaders. Highlighting a few here. At the top, we have our personalized student dashboard. This is where parents and students can go to monitor progress on the focused outcomes, because understanding where you are and where you need to go is a key factor to success. We have our high dosage tutoring, which we'll talk about later, and our Literacy Reimagined work aimed at boosting literacy rates for our students. Coaching with Khan is a numeracy-based support program for students to grow their math skills. And our Metro Schools Reimagined initiative is designed to strengthen academic pathways in our clusters and is leading the work of bringing 5th grade to all of our elementary schools, starting this year with the Whites Creek, Maplewood, and Pearl-Cone clusters. Now that we've talked a lot about what we've been doing over the last 16 months, to support student learning during this pandemic, let's dive into the numbers from the latest TN Ready data. It is important to really ground this conversation in reminding us that we've truly been navigating a pandemic over the last 16 months. We don't know the extent or the impact that would have happened to our student success without the great work of our teachers and our support staff in our schools daily. But here we have statewide TN Ready data compared with Metro Nashville Public Schools TN Ready data. Statewide, there was a 5% decline in proficiency, which is defined as on track or mastered, and an 8.3% decline in MTSS proficiency compared to the last available test data, which was from the 2018-19 school year, because as you remember, TCAP testing was canceled in 2019-2020. As I talked about before, statewide, we saw that economically disadvantaged students were hit hardest by the pandemic and saw the greatest declines. And urban school districts like Metro Nashville and Shelby tend to have the highest proportion of economically disadvantaged students in the state. So it follows that MTSS would see a steeper decline in overall proficiency compared to some of the suburban school districts in the state. MTSS has been fortunate to be the recipient of historic investments in public education, both by the Mayor and Metro Council in the form of operating dollars to have the best paid educators in the state and to maintain our continuity of operations and create advocacy centers in all of our elementary schools, and also in the form of federal ESSER funding passed through the CARES and Recovery Acts by Congress. This ESSER funding has been used to immediately respond to the pandemic through safety and wraparound support measures while schools were closed, followed by strategic investments and improvements to our educational service, such as fully funded literacy curriculum to ensure each child has access to their own books and learning materials for reading, with additional investments in math and other subjects in the years to come. Incorporated into that is professional development, because a high quality curriculum requires training to ensure it is implemented with fidelity and that all students have equal access to the lessons and teaching to maximize effectiveness. We've been able to fund additional planning days so that teachers are able to carefully think through and plan out their lessons for students before the school year began. Our Navigator program, one of our 14 signature initiatives, connects students with a caring adult to ensure their social emotional needs are being met. We have our personalized student dashboard, which we discussed before. And one of the most important aspects, in my opinion, is that MTSS is the only district we are aware of that has spiraled down a significant portion of our ESSER funding directly to schools to meet the unique needs of their student populations. With ESSER 2.0, that was $24 million directly to schools with a baseline level of financial support to each school, with increased funding for every economically disadvantaged pupil. On this slide, we see our year-over-year declines in literacy from the 2018-19 and 2020 school years. Statewide, there was a 6% decline in proficiency, and MTSS saw a similar decline in proficiency, with some bright spots. The question is, how do we address this? First and foremost, we start with core instruction and making sure we have high quality grade level materials that have been adopted, purchased, and provided to all teachers in advance of the school year. That includes foundational skill materials for our lower grades and increased time to address these needs. This nearly $10 million investment will lay the foundation for everyone for our recovery, ensuring all students receive access to a high quality core curriculum. Paid professional development and planning time for teachers, coupled with comprehensive trainings for administrators, will allow our staff to begin high quality instruction on day one, which is what happened for our first day of school, in ways like never before. District funded intervention platforms will be leveraged for students receiving Tier 2 interventions and can be utilized through the use of one-to-one technology both in school and at home. High dosage tutoring will be delivered during the school day for many students and also during before and after school programs at schools using ESSER dollars to meet the unique needs of their student population. Here we see our 2018-19 and 2020-21 year-over-year proficiency rates for numeracy. As you can see, state proficiency dropped by 12% and MTSS dropped by 14%. So how do we address that? While literacy gets a lot of the focus in the educational conversation, numeracy is also an important factor in a student's success. Just as literacy, we are focusing on strong, rigorous core instruction, and a big part of that is ensuring our teachers and students have high quality materials. With the state delaying the next math adoption for 2 years, MTSS did not wait. We're not waiting, but instead we'll be providing strong materials starting this fall, this academic year. We're also focusing our high dosage tutoring on math for students in grades 8 and 9 to get in even more supports for students in learning critical content for college, careers, and the ACT. We have also purchased the iReady intervention program and provided it to all of our schools so that students who fall into Tier 2 and Tier 3 or even more intensive intervention categories can get more extensive support to catch up with their grade level peers and to be on grade level. Looking at our science scores, we saw less of a decline in proficiency compared to the statewide data. We have some bright spots here. We know that science in particular is best taught with hands-on instruction. So we saw that at both the district and state level, this subject area saw the largest declines overall. Social studies scores saw trends much like literacy and numeracy. While the state regressed 3%, MTSS saw a decline of a little over 5%. Unlike with literacy and math, there aren't specific interventions or tiers for science and social studies. Although some of our schools do offer more extensive STEM or STEAM programming than others based on their instructional model. In order to support these topic areas, we've made investments in textbooks and supplementals to ensure students have individual access to and are learning from the best available instructional materials, and teachers had the opportunity to choose from a variety of professional development programs in these areas. I would be remiss without also noting that historically, when literacy and numeracy improve, so does science and social studies. To that end, we expect the investments I mentioned in those areas previously to pay dividends in science and social studies as our students are empowered with improved literacy and numeracy skills. Ensuring every student is known means personalized learning supports aimed at the individual needs of students. High dosage tutoring is going to be a critical component of this, and we'll need community support and volunteers to make it work most effectively, both in the coming years and after our ESSER funding runs out. We've already received philanthropic commitments to fund this program, but if you are interested in tutoring one of the up to 7,000 students who are anticipated to participate in the program, please visit pencilforschools.org to sign up and find more information. Again, pencilforschools.org. Our one-to-one technology ratio will allow students to access course content, grades, and continue learning while at home, and to also offer a blended learning experiences all across our district classrooms. Now, in summary, we must move back to basics. We must move back to basics, but if we go back to that previous slide, a few things I want to hit on before we go there. As we've discussed, our district funded interventions in literacy and numeracy are going to help students who are behind their peers to catch up while continuing to learn grade level content through our instruction. Through our ESSER spiral, schools are purchasing their own technology-based platforms and additional staffing to support the individual needs of our students. Here, I want to also highlight our personalized student dashboard will be available through the family portal so that parents and guardians can monitor the progress and success of their students and work with their schools to get extra supports for their children as needed. That's why that personalized dashboard has been launched. And as we move to the next slide, I want to highlight this in summary, and I'll say this again. We have to move back to the basics to get it right, so that we make forward progress and success for all of our students. We are quickly moving into a period of recovery and then immediately into acceleration. And we have to get the fundamental inflection points right. Recovery won't happen in a single semester or a single school year. Remember, this is one data point. We know that the pandemic had an impact on student success, but we also know the potential of all of our students. It will take hard work, focus, and continued innovations and investments to ensure we are adapting to the needs of our students who are harmed most by the pandemic, while also enhancing our core instruction and foundational skills to increase academic rigor for all of our students beyond the pandemic in ways that will close historic learning gaps among our student groups. Again, kudos to our team, to our stakeholders, to our partners, to our parents and guardians who are committed to this work on behalf of our students. We know great work has happened. We don't know the extent that this pandemic has had or will have on our student success. But we have a plan in place and a path forward towards success for all of our MTSS students. Thank you for joining us for this presentation, and we look forward to continuing to show the hard work being done at the school and district levels to ensure that every student is known. Thank you.